Hey guys, this is Aditya Verma and welcome to another video. So this year's WWDC was a bit different from the ones that we have been seeing for the past 33 years. This time the changing factor being that the conference was to be held fully online with no in-person attendance. And obviously we were all curious about how Apple would pull this off, being interesting and not being embarrassing, while at the same time provide a keynote. And honestly, they pulled it off really well. Their solution was a pre-recorded conference, and that added a lot of dynamicity to the keynote. From the transitions to the camera movements to the changing sets, the production quality was just A+. Now that is done, let's get to what was covered in the keynote. The Apple OSs are obviously getting updated, and Apple did announce the next major leap for the company, which, as you might have guessed, is their switch to Apple Silicon, their own SoC. Now let's cover them one by one. So first, iOS 14. The catching part of this update is obviously the new widgets that can be added to the home screen. Now don't get me wrong, widgets has always been in the Apple ecosystem, but only in the today view on the left of the app screen. While you could add apps along with widgets in the home screen in Android from ever since its introduction in 2008, you couldn't add widgets along with apps in iOS, but now you can. For whatever reason that took so long, one does have to agree that the iOS widgets look more elegant and modern than the Android widgets, most of them which still look outdated. So to add a widget, you long press the screen and then hit on the top left hand corner where there's a plus sign. Then opens up the widget corner where you can select a widget and drag the widget onto the home screen and place it anywhere you want. You can also add a smart stack, which is basically a compilation of widgets which can automatically or manually change. And that's it about widgets. And another feature is App Library. If you go past your app screens, you can now find a new page known as the App Library, which is basically a categorized view of your apps. And the newly downloaded applications find their way in a folder separately, and that's quite useful. There's also this feature which really caught my eye, and it's called App Clips, which lets you download a portion of an app without directly having to install them. It really rhymes with Google Instant Apps, which was quite a similar idea. Basically, you can download this portion of an app, then sign in with Sign in Apple, pay with Apple Pay, and etc. without having to install the full app and clutter up your home screen. App clips can be launched from websites, messages, NFC tags, QR codes, or even there's a thing called app clip codes, which basically incorporates NFC tags and visual code. So you can use any one of them to launch these app clips. And developers can start making app clips from a part of an app, but it should be less than 10 MB so that the app clip works fast enough. Now let's talk about Siri. Till now, whenever you called upon Siri, Siri would appear as a full screen UI, which was pretty annoying if you wanted to run it side by side with any other app. However, with iOS 14, if you launch Siri, it would appear as an animated logo at the bottom of the screen, and when you give it a command like telling you the weather would appear as a card on the top of the screen without disturbing the screen itself. And you can expand it if you want to. Siri also has more facts now. It has about 20 times more facts. So that would be pretty useful, and Siri would be able to tell you more direct facts rather than redirecting you to the web. Now another feature which Apple has introduced in the iOS 14, which has been there in Android for quite some time now, is PIP, or picture in picture mode, which allows you to save video playback while using other apps. Now while using a video app and in a video playback mode, if you exit the app, the video app switches into PIP mode and you can move the window across the screen, zoom in or zoom out, and you can even hide the video while still hearing the audio. Again, a very nicely implemented feature. Now let's talk about some app updates brought together by iOS 14. First of all, in the iMessage app, you now have pin conversations where you can swipe in from the left on a message and it would appear at the top in a separate corner. as a pinned conversation. There is also now new customizations for emojis which include face coverings like masks and also age options. There are also new Memoji stickers available. Mentions have been introduced in group chats and you can tweak your settings to let you be notified only when you get mentioned in a group chat. Also there are inline replies, so other people know which message you are replying to. Now setting towards maps, there is now the new mode known as cycling, which is designed in order to route cyclists around town. So it can let you know about elevations, how busy a road can be, and whether there are steps coming in. Also there is now EV routing for electric vehicles and it will let you know where the next charging stop is going to be. CarPlay is getting new wallpapers and apps like parking, EV routing and quick food ordering, but the most important feature is the ability to now tap and unlock your car with your iPhone. This uses NFC and the first car to implement this would be the 2021 BMW 5 Series. You can also share your car keys with someone via iMessage and give them a restricted or full access to your car. Now finally there's a new app known as Translate which helps you in having conversations in two different languages between two different people. This offline app uses machine learning in order to detect the language being spoken and translate it to the other selected app and vice versa. This only supports a few selected languages right now, but you can hope for the list to develop. So let's move on to the iPad OS 14, where we have a lot of features that we had seen in the iOS 14. So there's redefined widgets and Siri appears at the bottom right hand corner instead of occupying the full screen, etc. And there's also now toolbars and sidebars for mini apps like photos and files and notes. And there's also the universal search feature which allows you to search for any application, document or contact, which is just like Spotlight on Mac. Calls don't occupy the full screen anymore and just come up as a card on the top part of the screen which you can accept, reject or dismiss by swiping it to the top of the screen. And this feature is coming to iOS 14 as well, and it applies to normal phone calls as well as VoIP calls such as Skype calls. And if you look at the summary of the iPad OS updates as was projected by Apple at the end of the iPad OS presentation, you can see that you can change the normal, that is default browsing and messaging applications. That means you can change your default browsing and messaging applications from Safari and iMessage to any other application you want like WhatsApp or Chrome. And if you look at another card on the same image, you can see that for voice memos there is now lesser room noise and reverb, so that means better voice quality. But leaving all that aside, the thing which really grabs attention about this iPadOS update is the new stuff that you can do with the Apple Pencil on the iPad. So there's a new mode known as Scribble, and this mode lets you write anything onto a text field and the written text will get converted into typed text. So say you are doing something with the Apple Pencil on the iPad, say you're drawing something and you want to look up something on Safari. So you don't have to put your pencil aside and just type text, but you can use the pencil itself for searching. So that's a really good feature, and it also has multi-language support, so you can write Chinese and English on the same field and Scribble can recognize that. There's also now handwriting recognition, so you can do basically whatever you have been doing with typed text earlier in Apple OS and do the same with handwritten text now. So that includes 2-tap gestures, 3-tap gestures, copying, pasting, changing the color of the text, moving the text around, etc. And there's also data detectors, so when you write something, it can detect whether the written text is a phone number, an address, etc. So iPadOS 14 is all about giving handwritten text the same status as what typed text has. So now let's move on to WatchOS 7, where the first feature to greet you, quite literally, is the multiple complications. Earlier you could only add one complication on a watch face, but now you can add multiple complications on a single watch face, and there's also face sharing. So you can download watch faces from third-party applications, websites, or even from messages shared by your contacts. There is a new mode known as Dance in Workouts now, which basically uses the difference in the track data of the accelerometer and the gyroscope of the legs and the arms and integrates this data with the heart rate in order to calculate the calorie burn. And there's also other modes like core training, functional strength training, and cool down. The activity app has been redesigned and renamed into the fitness app, and there's now a new wind down mode which is designed so as to minimize the distraction so that you can get a better sleep at the later part of the night. So during this time your iPhone will switch into a wind down screen and will be set on do not disturb, and your watch face will switch from any rich watch faces that you may have set in your day to a simple watch face so as to minimize distractions. Funnily enough, watchers can now detect when you're washing your hands by detecting the motion of your hands and detecting the sounds of running water and soap, and it will encourage you to wash your hands for a required period of time. And I feel that's quite a feature that's made conveniently according to the time in which we are right now. And I think we can have a use of that even after the pandemic is gone and over. So before we move on to TVOS, we have some miscellaneous features to talk about, starting with AirPods. So with AirPods, there's no automatic switching between devices. So say you're on your iPhone, listen to some music, and then you move on to your podcast in iPad, and then you move on to your MacBook where you're seeing some video, and between all of this your AirPods remain consistent, giving you the audio playback depending on the device which you're using, and there's no additional tweaking which you have to do in this situation. So that's a great plus. And then there's also spatial audio where algorithms remap the sound field according to the motion of your head and the device, so that there's a real life vibe to it as the sound feels like it's coming from a place and a specific point in space. But for this, the content has to be encoded in 5.1 or 7.1 surround sound or for Dolby Atmos. Apple also introduced some privacy features which are really important that you need to go through them. First of all, when apps want to use your location, you can give an access to an approximate location instead of an exact location. And when apps use your camera or your microphone, well, you will be given a visual indication of the same by a green or an orange light in the status bar. And when you go to an app page in the App Store, you can see what type of data the app is collecting from you and for what purpose. And if the app wants to track you for giving you personalized ads, it will need to ask for your permission first. These are some features which I really hope Android implements in the next year or two, and seeing these getting implemented in iOS makes me wonder why they haven't been implemented in Android yet. There are also some new HomeKit developments. So as soon as you add a digital accessory in your home app, it can suggest you new automations like turning on the lamp when you reach a home for a digital lamp, for example. And there's also adaptive lighting which automatically changes the room temperature according to the time of the day. So for example, it will be a warm temperature in the morning and it will head towards cooler temperatures as you reach the midday and the night. And for security cameras that are added to HomeKit now, there are activity zones which basically lets you focus on certain areas instead of focusing on the whole vision. So for example, you can focus on the porch of your house instead of focusing on the nearby street. And there is also face recognition. So when someone has come at a doorbell and is ringing it, you know who has come. Let's now move on to tvOS, where there is now multi-user support for games. So you can resume your gameplay wherever you left it off. And there's also support for the Xbox Elite 2 and the Xbox adaptive controllers. There is no PIP mode, so you can have a video playback while browsing through other interfaces in the OS like other apps. And when someone has rung the doorbell or there's some suspicious activity outside, you get the notification as a pop-up on your Apple TV along with the security camera view. And you can even ask Siri to open up any camera view on your Apple TV. And for the final OS update, the macOS 11 or the macOS Big Sur as Apple calls it. I don't know why they name like that. It sounds like the weirdest or funniest name that you can ever get to an OS. With this update, there are some major design changes, including a new toolbar, a new sidebar, new app icons, and a refreshed dock. There is now a control center, and you may have seen that in the iOS or the iPadOS versions, where you can tweak controls, and if you want to use these controls more easily, you can drag these controls onto the menu bar and you can use them. And by the way, that menu bar is now translucent. The notification center can be brought upon by clicking the time button in the menu bar, and it features group notifications and even widgets that we had seen with the iOS 14 and iPadOS 14 updates. There are now new animations for many apps, and there is even rework settings for many controls like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, brightness, sound, etc. Let's now talk a bit about the updated apps itself. For messages, you receive all the updates that you have received with the iOS 14 or iPadOS 14 updates, and that includes Memoji, pinned conversations, inline replies, and even messaging effects. And for the redesigned maps, there are now indoor maps and 3D views. And if your friends have shared their ETA with you, you can even see where they are on the map. In Safari, there is now the new privacy report button, which lets you identify trackers, and if you want, you can even receive a full privacy report. And instead of the normal non-customizable start page that you received in the previous OS updates, for Safari this time it is a new customizable start page wherein you can even set background images or add new sections. There are also new controls. So if you're browsing in the tab, you can preview the contents of another tab by hovering around it, or you can close the tabs to its right by the click of a button. And these are features that browsers like Edge or Chrome already had, so it's delightful that Safari finally has them. And there's also extensions now, but with the clause that the user first has to give permission to the extension to access the website, so that the extension cannot use any data for any suspicious reason. And this means that the user can grant access to the extension for only one day, or for one website, or for all websites. But as you guessed, beyond the OS updates, Apple made a very important statement on the WWDC, announcing their 2-year ISA switch for the Macs from the Intel x86 64 processors which they have used since 2005 to the ARM 64 processors made by them, which they have named as the Apple Silicon. This finally confines Apple to use their own SoC SiP processors for all of their Apple devices, as they have previously done with the A series chips for the iPhones and the iPads, and the S series chips for the Apple Watches. And this update is set to bring out better power management and better performance. But why have they made this shift? Well, when you have an external dependency for obtaining your processors, there is little control that you can imply on when the processors will be produced, how much performance it can carry out, and how much battery it will drain. But when you have your own SoC, it means that you have more control over all of these. And especially for Apple, it means that they can have more optimization, and they can stand out of the rest of the Windows laptops which also use Intel chips. And besides that, when you have a common SoC architecture across all of your devices, it is much easier for software developers to start writing code which can work well across all of these devices. So it's very logical of Apple to start making this move, as they depend a lot on optimization. And besides that, because of the similar architecture, you can now run iOS and iPadOS apps on the Mac, so that's a plus. For the ISA switch, Apple has introduced 2 new pieces of software, the predecessors of whom we had seen in their similar shift from PowerPC to Intel back in 2005. There's the Universal 2, which is a fat binary that can run both Intel based Mac software and Silicon based Mac software using a single binary file. Then there's Rosetta 2, which is a dynamic binary translator having JIT translation support, so that apps made for Intel based Macs can run perfectly on Silicon based ones. This is quite important, as all developers may not be ready to update their apps as Silicon launches out to the public. So Rosetta 2 will ensure that their apps will run perfectly on Silicon based Macs until they are ready to update. As part of the switch to Silicon, Apple has launched a Quick Start program in which developers can be a part of, which costs around $500, and where they would be endowed with the Mac Mini, with the A12Z Bionic processor, which we had earlier seen in the 2020 iPad Pro, but here with the beta version of macOS Big Sur and with 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage. So when can we expect the silicon based Macs? Well, Apple says the first silicon based Mac is coming by the end of this year, and while silicon based Macs are going to be the high priority for Apple now, it does not mean that they are going to stop supporting Intel based ones completely. In fact, Apple has said that there are some few Intel based Macs which are about to come, and that they are not going to stop supporting Intel based Macs for some more years. And while that switch has to happen at some point, Apple will suffer a bit of a business loss, because many people think that their Intel based Macs are going to get unsupported in a while, and so they will wait for the Apple based ones. But as I said, they have to make the switch at some point. So that's it about the WWDC 2020. While we didn't receive any hardware announcements, I don't know why we should, it's a developer conference, we definitely did receive some major changes. And we still don't know which is the first silicon based Mac and silicon chip for the Mac, and let's hope that arrives by this next conference. And as for the OS updates, the major ones are the widgets in iOS and Scribble in iPadOS. Many don't like the new app icons in macOS 11, which I can definitely understand to a bit. They definitely need to remove that battery icon. And about the rest, I feel there are a lot of similarities to the different updates that have come to all the OS. For example, the widgets are there in all OS, and the new messaging features like inline replies are coming to all OS. And there are a lot of similarities, and that's good. So which is the best and which is the worst update that has come and has been discussed in the WWDC 2020? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and click subscribe. And when you hit subscribe, make sure to hit the post notification button so that you don't miss any video. And that's it for me now. It's Aditya Verma, and I'll see you later. Bye.